All right, everyone, I'm really excited for this. I've got my dear friend Scott Shapiro on with us today. He is in the real estate vertical at Facebook. So Scott works at Facebook, and Scott and I have known each other for, I don't know,
4 years, three,
four
4 years now.
years. That's right.
Yeah.
And we've attended conferences together. We, have a lot of different discussions about what's going on in the industry. And we were offline a couple of days ago talking about everything that's currently going on. And he said, you know what, we at Facebook wanted to deliver something to the real estate community that would help kind of guide them through how to really navigate getting your listings seen
hmm
organically and really focused on virtual open houses, which we see
Yeah.
a big demand for. And people are kind of a little frustrated and sometimes confused on how to actually do that effectively. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us and bringing this knowledge to us.
My pleasure, Travis. And you nailed it. We've known each other several years, and as friends, I think the thing that we always want to do, which we enjoy about working with you and other leaders in the community, influencers, people like Nick and Tristan and others that we're all friends with, is
Right.
the common goal is to bring goodness and to bring education to the industry, because there is a lot of chatter when it comes to our platforms. And so the best thing we could do as a team in a time of crisis is try to give our best foot forward and lens forward officially from our platforms out to the community. You're absolutely right. This is not a conversation that we're focusing on advertising. This is, you can use advertising, but you don't need to do this stuff. And we also want to help folks who've never done this think through how to do this. It can be daunting to do live if you've never done it before. The technology can seem scary, and we want to, take a little bit of that pressure off, give some tips and tricks, which you and I will talk about, and hope that folks watching this will leave feeling like they can do this, and educated on the process. And then we have some stuff that you'll post up to your page with a 2-sheet guide about it. It's one that we put together from the Facebook team to ship out to the industry, so that you can listen to this and hear our conversation, but then you'll have like a 2-page PDF that you can literally use when you go out to do virtual open homes.
Perfect. And it's funny because I see all this week, and it seems to be more rapid fire and kind of increasing. People are asking in different groups that I'm a part of,
hmm
"Hey, how are you doing virtual events?" And everyone's
hmm
asking, what tools and how do I get started?
hmm
So if someone's to kind of start to go down this path, which I believe is part of the new normal, right, and making sure that we stay
Yeah.
visible. How do you get the word out? What are the ways to get people to tune in?
Great question. The first thing you want to make sure you have is a Facebook for Business page. And that's something, some of what we're going to talk about over the next 30 minutes or so is these are things we've talked about from stages for the last couple of years. So having a Facebook business page is the way to go. First, you are CEO of your own business. You are a real estate agent and or a broker. Um, we highly recommend using that business page to start that process, because then what you can do is you can set an event. So you can invite folks who are followers on your page. You can do that organically. If you want to put a little bit of paid marketing behind promoting the live open house, you can do that as well. But the core is you set up an event, you put it on your page, you invite people through either our platforms, or you can also extend it by your email list. You can put it on your website. And that is sort of the RSVP. So that's the first component of it. So it's the page, setting up an event, setting up a time, and then knowing, and we'll get into this a little bit later, which is it's okay if only a certain amount of people are watching during the live, because you can then take that content, we'll talk about this, and repurpose it. And people can watch it later, especially if you're broadcasting from your page. So you can do things like watch parties. So that's kind of the basics. I can tell you, I'll walk you through a couple of steps tactically, because I'm sure people are like, okay, great. How do I do this? Right? How do I set the event? So you can set it on your calendars. You can send updates and reminders. We talked about this. But if you go to the Facebook app and you're on your business page, we call it a hamburger. It's in the bottom right-hand corner, usually for iOS. I know Android's a little bit different.
Right.
Looks like 3 lines. Click it. You go to your pages. You select your business page. You tap create a post and choose event from the list. Add an event photo. What we would probably recommend is if you have the curbside picture of the house, even when you're doing advertising, paid advertising, that always works better. For single family residences, it works better. Apartment and condo is a little bit different. But if you're selling a single family residence, in the event photo, put the picture of the house. Make sure you have your event's title, location, the date, the time. Save the event draft and then post it to your page. And then what you can do then is take that, do an email blast, hit people from that perspective. And then also you can post that you're going to do an FB Live on your website. So if the listing has a website, you can also do that. And just know that Facebook fans who follow your page automatically get a notification when you go live. Great example, practical example in my life using the platform is there's a former Facebook employee who was on our creative shop who I'm friends with. He moved to Las Vegas to start his own agency. And in the crisis with COVID, he's doing daily meditation classes. So it's literally like clockwork. It pops up on my Facebook notification that my friend Nathan is doing this class. So similarly, followers will get that same notification that you, Travis, are at 100 Main Street in Albuquerque or Santa Fe or Dallas, Texas, and you're doing a live event.
The beauty with Facebook Lives is that they get a ton of engagement, right? And I think some of the numbers may have changed statistically, but I think it's like anywhere from like 8 to 9 times more engagement than some videos, because you get to actually communicate with them as you're live. And
Right.
there's not a lot of opportunities you get to do that, and so that's one of the cool things, right? As you start to kind of walk people through this process. Now, is there a resource where people can really get a better idea? I know there's a visual, actual resource to walk people through what the proper steps are for that kind of Facebook Live.
So one is the two-sheeter I mentioned, which you're going to post. So I think that's the easiest method to go through it because it was designed with real estate agents in mind. So we designed it. We worked with our creative shop and our marketing team to think about agents and the things agents need. And especially if you've never done this before, it's an easy to use guide. There are websites that you can look for, Facebook websites. The one is live.fb.com. That gives you some practical tips. So if you want to go beyond the two-sheeter, and then this one is long, but it's basically facebook.com/Facebook media/best-practices/live. And Travis, if you want to also post those up in the description of the webinar here, people can go and click to those. Those are two external facing Facebook websites that speak to live. So I think if you have those two, plus our guide, plus you listen to this conversation, you'll be in a pretty good place to go and do both Facebook and Instagram Live, by the way. It doesn't have, you can do both.
Getting prepared for Facebook Live is kind of essential, right? Not just putting out the phone and winging it, which I've done before. And sometimes, you get nervous and you start to stumble and you're not quite sure exactly how it's going to pan out. And it can make you more nervous because you're not prepared. So what's like the best checklist to really kind of work through so that mentally you're in the game, you really kind of have a better idea of how the Facebook Live is going to go, so you truly just nail it?
Couple of things. I'm a big sports fan. And if you think about football, most football teams script the first 20 plays when they have the ball on offense. Similarly, I'm a huge baseball fan. They have a script. The starting pitcher has a script for going through the 9 or 8, depending if you're an American League fan, baseball batters that are going to come up to the plate. I think it's really important that similarly, if you're doing a physical open house, you know what you want to say about the property. The biggest difference is this. It's my daughter's picture. This is the communication device of which we're going to show that open house. But it's no different in a lot of regards, Travis, that if I showed up, you would know all the things and the attributes about the property. So that's one, know the property, right? It's the basics of what you would do for an open house. I do think a couple of things that are pointers that you want to think about. One, when you are talking to your sellers, make sure you have their Wi-Fi passwords. Ask them for the Wi-Fi. Make sure you walk around and do a couple of walkthroughs. There are a couple of things I think you should watch out for. I'll give you a good practical everyday example. Since we've been at Shelter Under Home, out in California, have been working out of my basement. I've rented the same house for 10 years. I have never worked out of the basement because it has some dead spots. It's not the greatest place that I want to work. But if I were walking the house as an agent, the reason I bring that up is I would start to understand where we may have dead spots, especially if you're broadcasting live. The second thing, so the Wi-Fi is the first. The second thing I think why you want to do a walkthrough is from a safety perspective, you want to understand what's in the house. Is it a step down from the kitchen to the living room? Are the stairs narrow? Do you feel comfortable with maybe even the width of the stairs? I think about classic mid-century modern homes with open stairs, not the flush stairs. So, if you're wearing a certain type of shoe, does that kind of affect you? Even something as small as opening the sliding glass door. Does it stick? Do you need a little more effort? So walking through and doing that prep work is great. The other thing I would do, or two other things before we move to the next point, is I would definitely invest in something called a gimbal. A gimbal is like a selfie stick on steroids. They're about $85 to $100, depending on the model you get from Amazon. Basically, you clip your phone in, the phone is facing out, you have the stick, it's a steady cam. There are two reasons that it's really great. One, you don't want any video you take, whether it's live or not, to be like the Blair Witch Project. Nobody wants to watch something that's all
Right.
over the place. The other thing is by being able to hold it out, it does give you a spatial understanding of the rooms that you're in. And also what's nice is that you can see the interaction while you're doing the live. So if questions come up or you see kind of, the smiley faces, the thumbs up, or if somebody comes back and gives a comment and says, hey, Travis, you're in the kitchen. Would you mind walking over to the range? I want to see, you mentioned it was this type of range.
Right.
Is it a 6 burner or a 4 burner? Can you get closer? It allows you to call those audibles and see that content coming in. So those are my thoughts. The last one I will give you is I would shoot a 15-second video outside the home. You can use that and repurpose that later as almost its own little ad unit that you could put into a stories format or into feed. So, we know, and I mentioned it before, that our research shows that outside curbside photos are better. So maybe do a little quick 15-second blurb. Hi, I'm Travis, and I'm at 100 Main Street here in Dallas. This is the Oak Park neighborhood, and this is great. Excited to walk you through the house in my Facebook or Instagram Live. And that's a nice way that you can have a video, or you can reference, putting more content back on your page. So those are kind of the basics. Script it, walk it, do the legwork before you go live. One, you'll feel much better, and two, your content will be probably a little bit better for the consumer to watch.
We've talked about narrative a little bit in some of our past conversations with being able to tell a story. Mm-hmm. And not just kind of hammer out statistics, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So for me, like my house, it's 118 years old that I live in right now. It's an old house, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty sure I heard some bumps in the night last night. We'll get into that, but there's an opportunity, I think, with every home to tell a story that really is relatable, that draws people in, or the story of the homeowner and why they originally bought it, so that there's almost like a story arc that brings people in, because good marketing is about storytelling, right? We're all back into the primitive ages of being around a fire, of telling stories, right? And looking at paintings on the wall that we're talking about, hunting the deer in the forest. There's something really beautiful about that draws people in. For something a little bit deeper, what's the narrative that you would start to build? Any recommendations on things that people should say as they start to really take people through the property?
One of the big things I think people miss is they jump right into the property and they forget to properly introduce themselves. So also think that this is a moment where the great majority of marketing digitally for real estate right now, the home is the hero, as it should be. It is the product, right? And I think through digital, it's been tough sometimes for the agent, your expertise and your personality to come through. The opening 60 seconds for your intro before you start walking anywhere should really be an intro. Hi, I'm Travis Tom, and I work with, Tom Realty. I'm here today I specialize in the Oak Park neighborhood. Today, I'm really excited to show you a wonderful house that's a craftsman house, a classic house that represents the best of Oak Park architecture. Things like that. I'm making this up literally
Right.
as I'm talking to you. Go slow, identify yourself, make sure they know who you are because you're going to be their tour guide and their voice of expertise on on this home. Be genuine. If you have a personality that is, a certain way, be that person. And if you don't try to be that person. I think one of the things that really happens a lot in these instances of storytelling is you want to be genuine. Be yourself. It 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 shines through. Your expertise doesn't have to always be delivered with, talking loudly or a mile a minute. Be you. They are there to see the home, but what is a byproduct of that is your expertise and how they see you showing up. Um, so slow intro. It's fine to take a minute to introduce yourself. It's fine to take that minute to introduce the property and give context. Remember, once this is shot live, people can go back to your page, you can promote it. So it's not, if somebody comes in at the 5 minute mark, you don't have to go back. You might want to reference the address a couple of times
Right.
and your name, but like tell that story. And then again, it goes back to the pre-work we talked about, Travis, which is, where do you want to, what do you want to stay? What do you want to say about the home? What are the attributes? Again, if we were walking, if we were on tour together, if we got in the car and we went and looked at 30 homes in 4 or 5 days, what would you say about this home? How would you act? And I think that's something people think, well, I have the cell phone, I have to be different. It's like, well, no, that's really what the consumers want to understand. They want to understand who you are, where the house is, the attributes of the home, know the story, be honest. Somebody asked me a question a couple of weeks ago. Well, what if there's something that's not great about the home? You know, I don't think you have to go out of your way to highlight it, but I also wouldn't state that you should ever, don't lie. Be honest with people.
Right.
So tell the story, have the script, be comfortable in, you do that. You've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times as a real estate professional. All you're doing is you're just doing it with a phone as the eyes for the consumer.
And I think a good tip too that I learned early on is looking directly into the camera.
Hmm.
Right. I've done some Facebook lives where I kind of actually split tested the data after the fact, where when I was on a hike and I had glasses on and I was looking at the camera, but I had glasses on, people couldn't see my eyes. And
Oh.
the engagement rate was really, really low versus ones where I'm actually looking directly into the camera, like I was, like the person was right in front of me, right? Like I'm giving them a tour of the
Hmm.
property, and the engagement is much higher. So like you said, really just work as if the person is actually there and you
Hmm.
walk them through. Now, another thing that I see is, and I've definitely done this before, where we get nervous about being
Hmm.
on Facebook Live. We start to rush, so we want to get rid of that anxiety as fast as possible and say, all right,
Yes.
I'm only gonna do this for 60 seconds and then it's over, it's gone. But there's a part of the organic algorithm inside of Facebook where it needs a little bit more time to start to pick up that people are engaging with the Facebook Live
Hmm.
and feed it out to more of your audience. What's the ideal time length that people should be doing for this type of virtual tour on a Facebook Live?
Love the question, because there's no one answer. And I'm going to give you an example. Um, the house that we live in is 1,000 square feet. It's in an urban environment. Um, Behind me, behind this wall, is a small courtyard with a mother-in-law unit. So, as an example, you as a professional wouldn't have a lot to shoot here. Um, if you walk through and you are going nice and slow and you are doing 1,000 square feet, maybe it would take you 10 or 15 minutes.
Right.
And that feels like the right amount of time to show out the attributes of the home, to do your intro, explain the neighborhood, explain the property. Now, let's flip that and state that maybe we have a house in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, and it's 3,000 square feet and it has a large yard and or a pool or you're in a cul-de-sac and you want to show that attribute because, the perfect buyer really is somebody who has small children and they want that neighborhood feel. There's no right answer because each home is different. What I would say is pace matters. Nice, slow and steady wins the race. People, think about it. If we were walking through this home, how long would we take? You would probably have an idea of, if you are in the car with a client, with a buyer versus a seller, like you would be, okay, I've got, Travis and I've got Scott, and we're going to go see 5 homes today. Okay, I've budgeted X amount of time. Because how long that walkthrough is going to take. So I think on the live component, right, it's if the home is bigger and you need that time, if it's 3 stories, if it has a fully furnished game room and outside, take the time and show that. Those are amazing attributes. Whereas here in the house I live in, it's a small urban house in the San Francisco Bay Area where you're just not going to have as much to show. And that's okay. That you show the house to its full potential, take the time, and if it's 10 minutes or it's 15, that's fine. If it's 30 because it's a huge house, that's fine. Again, I think it goes back to the storytelling aspect that you brought up, Travis. It's what's the story you want to tell? And some people, I think it's a hard skill, but real estate agents are storytellers. And I think the great majority of people, when they do this, they forget, well, I'm telling a story. Either I'm telling a story about myself and my services and my expertise, or I'm telling a story about the property. So I think that's important. One thing I will say as a curveball is, with each state having a different stay-at-home, shelter-in-place legality or thought process on this. In some states, we know that agents are not deemed essential workers and they can't go out to shoot the home.
Right.
A lot of these tips and tricks I would take and tell your seller to shoot for you. You can have the gimbal, as an example, delivered by Amazon right to their house. You can coach them through this. So it's the same thing. The advice we're telling you as a professional, if you can get out and do this, awesome. But if not, and you have to rely on your seller, same tips and tricks. So
Right.
those are things I would just think about, which is, and review, again, I think this is where shooting video, one of the things we've been telling folks is, if you don't feel comfortable in live, you can still take the same approach and shoot it as video that is stored on your cell phone. And then you can put that content on your Facebook for Business page. You can do it organically. If you decide that you think you want to market it, great. If you want it on the listing website, that's also another way to look at this. So those are ways that you can take that content. You can kind of right size it, right? You can feel, ooh, maybe a pre-video. Oh, you know what? I missed this part of the kitchen. When I do my live, I need to slow up and I need to spend more time in this room.
Right. Right. And so that kind of leads me into a good question, which is about really distribution. If we think of this as you got a Ferrari or whatever car it is, but it's beautiful, but it doesn't have an engine. It's not going to go anywhere. So when the distribution, what do you do with this video afterwards to really get the maximum amount of reach and create solid brand awareness? Because a lot of video is really, it performs really well, but it's also an opportunity for you to brand yourself, get in front of your audience, your sphere of influence, more people. So what would you suggest to do after that Facebook Live, so it has more, or the video, so it has more shelf life?
There are a couple of things you can do. And I want to be thoughtful about this because we know people, especially real estate agents right now, are having to make really hard decisions financially. So I want the spirit of this to be that I'm not advocating that you have to do advertising. I'm merely going to give you my best thoughts and suggestions, but know too that, if you choose to go organic, I want to give you the best tips and tricks. This is going to live on your Facebook for Business page. So that in and of itself, driving people to that page, seeing that content is really important. Most of what I think will happen is, most video is going to be shot during the day. I would think that 95% would be shot in the day versus like in the early evening. So even on live, if people aren't watching it live in the moment, they can go back and they can see that video. You can take the video, you can cut it down into bite-sized formats. So you can take some of those clips, and we're going to talk through a couple of apps that are free that you can use to edit. You can put that into stories, you can put that into feed, and you can do that organically. You can send out the live via an email blast. You can have it live on the page of the listing. So if you have a website and it has a listing page, you can insert all of that right in there. And yes, you can put paid media behind the live so that it attracts more than just the people who follow your page. That's another opportunity. But there's a host of things that I just walked through, which is knowing that people could go to your page, knowing that they'll be notified when you're live, knowing that you have other chains, that other ways that you can reach out to people. If you're doing a normal email mailer, a marketing effort, why not show and attach the link to your page and show, hey, I was at 100 Main Street in Dallas and Oak Park. Take a look at this live. Those are ways that you can distribute it out. And then yes, there's the paid side, but the paid side is really beyond your organic reach. So it really comes down to, if I need and want to reach more people outside of the people who are fans of my page, i.e. more consumers, and I need to sell the property on behalf of my seller, that's an option.
I think also another way that you might be able to leverage a little bit more reach is doing a watch party
Yes,
of the
absolutely.
video and tag your homeowner. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're friends with your homeowner on there, right, tag them in there,
Great
and,
point.
and that way the watch party, it kind of extends to them and some of
Yep.
their sphere and following, and then they might share it, and then their friends might share it after that. So it gets a little bit
It's a
more.
chain. That's a great point. That's a really great point. Is invite your seller into the process because they have friends who are probably living close by, and or maybe they it's a friend who knows the kids who's looking for a house because they want to be closer to the school, or
Right,
somebody who's in the goes to the same church or the same synagogue or is in the same community
right.
group. I think that's a great point. And I think again, don't be discouraged by how many people watch this live. Think about how many people are going to watch it in totality. The live is the vehicle to take the content, but it's not a one-shot deal. I think some people think, oh my God, I only had 15 people watch my live. Well, shoot, you're out there shooting on a Wednesday at 2:00 because that's what worked for your schedule. I'm making that up,
Right.
but that's okay because that can be repurposed. So I think that's a key point. I will also say, if you have key points of the home that you want to show, cutting the videos down into 15-second bite-sized things to fit other formats like stories and feed are really important. So you can kind of take the greatest hits of the home and put it into a more short form method.
That's perfect. A lot of people forget that there's other formats like you mentioned. In
Mhm.
being able just to kind of resize it and say, okay, I'm going to throw this into IGTV. I'm going to throw it into Instagram stories, and those are getting huge engagement right now. I mean, it's
Mhm.
pretty incredible the stats on those. So yeah, making sure that you can really leverage that
Mhm.
across all those platforms is really key. Um, Now, what would you do for people that have watched, that you saw that they watched, right? You saw
Mhm.
similar kind of comments come in. Um, is there, would you recommend following up with them on a
Mhm.
deeper level? Is that an opportunity
Yes.
to engage?
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm raising my hand, and one, the beauty of Facebook is real identity. So if you and I have never met and I see a comment by you, you're raising your hand, you're watching it, you're interested, we're not connected. And if they offer or ask a question, I think that's a great way to do direct messaging through Facebook Messenger or other tools such as that. If you're on Instagram, obviously Instagram direct messaging too. Um, my thought is it's a great way to start a conversation. It's Travis, I saw that you had a question about the kitchen. Thank you for the question. What else do you have any other questions about the house, the neighborhood? It's just starts a conversation, and the consumer, by commenting on the video and asking you something, they're the people leaning in. They're the ones who are watching. They're the ones who are saying, hey, I've got a question. Wait, it's a clue, right? They've dropped a clue. They are interested in the home. Follow up with them, because again, that's in, as soon as you stop the live, you can look. I mean, you could do it in the live. I think, again, if you have a gimbal, it's a little bit harder to reach forward and start replying, and you want to stay focused on the content. But
Right.
there's nothing that says I stop the live, I'm done, and I look and I go, oh my gosh, I have 25 people who made comments, and sit for 30, 40 minutes and just do direct messaging to those folks, introduce yourself,
Right.
answer their questions. It's a great way to start a relationship.
And that's it, and it makes it so easy where it really is just a click of a button and it goes
Oh
direct
yeah.
to Messenger, right?
Yes,
And then you start that
absolutely.
process. I know a good majority of my business comes from conversations in Messenger where someone saw a Facebook Live or whatever it is, and it is really just that tiny fragment of friction to be able to just click, boom, and now you're
Yeah,
instantly connected. Um,
absolutely.
it helps tremendously. Now you mentioned making sure that you do have Wi-Fi. I've made the mistake several times where I've
Yeah.
walked out of a conference in a hotel and then all of a sudden my Facebook Live drops because there's nothing there. What other
Mhm.
tips would you suggest to make sure that they can really nail this?
Um, I think, that's one. I really think the gimbal, just the more I talk to people, it really makes the video look a lot easier and smoother. I think there's a safety aspect, again, of just, not having the phone here. That's a very much like I'm looking at, as you can see my fingers, I'm looking at something right in front of me versus, I'm looking at something here. I mean, even right now, my laptop is probably 2 feet away from me. And so I have spatial awareness of where I am versus if we held the laptop up, we'd be like, my God, where am I? So I
Right.
think those are things that are elemental. I think the other thing, the one thing I would also do a pre-check on is lighting and sound. Some rooms, if a home is furnished, there's going to be a lot less echo than a home that's not furnished. And especially if you have a home that's not furnished, has hardwood floors, huge vaulted ceilings, there's going to be some echo.
Right.
Um, I I have known that some people have used a clip-on microphone. I don't have any brands or anything that I would recommend off the top of my head, but I think that could be one thing. Making sure your audio is good.
Right.
Um, Especially if you're in an environment like that. I think the other thing is making sure you check the lighting. And that's where the walkthrough comes in. Right now, checking your lighting, making sure that, the house shows up. Is it a rainy day? Is it a sunny day? Those types of things are all, how you show up and make it look as polished as you can.
Yeah, and make sure that the family's not asleep in all the beds. I,
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
actually on a home tour where that happened, where we showed up
Wow. No
and
way.
every single person, we walked to the master bedroom, family asleep, and we're like, okay. And there's 12 of us on this tour.
Oh
And,
my God.
we're immediately just like, this is not, we need to turn around and go. But making sure that, yeah, the house is prepped and really kind of show ready in
Hmm.
general, like you said, having a good walkthrough. But what are the limitations of open houses?
Hmm.
I think that's something that a lot of people need to kind of be prepared for.
I mean, you're a guide. You're guiding folks. I think, the great majority of real estate agents they're people, they're extroverts. They fuel off of people. And so it can be tough because you're not necessarily with people, right? Like you're directing, you're doing something sort of passive, right? But I think the more you do it, and even again, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, is if you are watching this and you go through this and you say, thanks, Mr. Facebook guy, I really enjoyed this. This was really educational. However, I just don't feel comfortable going live. Shoot video good. And these tips and tricks can be shot as video. You can put it up on the listing page site. You can put it on your Facebook site. You can send it as video. You can send it to your sellers. You can send it to prospective customers who reach out to you. This is how I approach showing your home.
Right.
So it's not a one size fits all. So I think, people get, and by the way, I want to be empathetic to it. It can be daunting. It's not the easiest thing to do if you don't feel comfortable doing it. I think the biggest thing is, the reactions that you would normally get with a person or people standing next to you, you won't get. What you do trade for it though, and I know as we kind of start wrapping up, I will tell you our thoughts, which is I think this is going to become the new normal. I think as consumers engage with this kind of content more and more, it's going to change the expectations
Right.
of the consumer. We've long known that video, sight, sound, and motion does land and attract folks more than static imagery. And for a variety of reasons, video can become an impediment for agents from a cost perspective, from asset perspective. This puts you in that game. It gives you the opportunity to tell your story, to tell the story of the home, to do it with sight, sound, and motion. And I think that when we come out of this, and there will be a lot of different effects that in the industry that we can't predict right now. I do think the skill set of using your mobile device and being able to show a home in this environment where consumers can take that content, watch the content on their own time, is going to do two things. One, I think it's the new normal from what they're going to expect to see creatively. I also think there's a benefit to the time and efficiency for an agent. If we think about the traditional open house model, it's I go to a home, I do 2 days of open houses, 4 to 5 hours each. So I'm putting 10 hours in, and you have no guarantee of your foot traffic. You have no idea what's going to roll through the door. You set up an open house, you clean the house, you have it professionally staged, and it's a torrential downpour. People aren't going to come. Oh my God, it's the first beautiful spring day in a state that's had snow. I talked to one of my teammates on our automotive team. It's still snowing in Michigan. If you set up an open house for the first Saturday that has beautiful weather, non-COVID, if we were in normal times,
Right.
what would that do for your foot traffic? So I think it's the new norm from the consumer model, what they expect. But I think it's also a new norm that you can take to your advantage and be more efficient. I can do a 30-minute virtual open home instead of 10 hours. Even with the prep time, if I spent the equal time, an hour of prep, hour of walkthrough, hour of light scripting, and a 30-minute shoot and a 30-minute Q&A afterwards through comments,
Right.
that's still 2 hours versus 5 hours. So I think that's going to change how we do it. And that's why I would encourage people to, put your toe in the water, take these steps, get more comfortable with it, because I think the sooner you do it, the more you're going to be in lockstep with what the consumers expect. And I also think it's going to be great because it gives you control. It's giving you a little bit more tangible control over how you're doing this process, which for years has been, I do all the hard work, I set it up, but I don't know what's going to walk through that door, right?
You're absolutely right. I think this is almost like a forced reinvention of open houses. It's an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
for people to really redesign and reinvent and win back their time. What is the consumer asking for, right? In being lockstep with the consumer behavior as it does become a little bit more malleable during this time and
Yeah.
reshape itself.
I think also consumers are going to want things more on demand. So if you think about it, think about entertainment, right? So now, we have Netflix, and Netflix is on demand. Anytime, you and I were joking a couple of weeks ago, I've been binge watching Cheers, which shows my age. But anytime I want it, I've got it. What we're seeing from our fellow teammates in automotive, because we work so closely as industries, in automotive, several car manufacturers now are dropping the car off at your curbside, right? We also work with counterparts on our restaurants team. Everything now is, in dining restaurants, obviously under COVID has changed, but think about it afterwards. Will we be even more inclined that we want to use DoorDash, Postmates, Caviar, all these things to bring it to us? Here, we cannot take the house to the
Right.
consumer physically, but what we can do is we can take the house visually and educationally and with that story to the consumer better. And I think that is something that we're going to see as an output of this. And not to really go really big sky crazy thoughts here, is, more and more as we go into a world that will have more and more tools that are easy to use for augmented reality and virtual reality, and who knows what the timeline is, but that will also follow closely to suit. So I think the message I would give anyone watching this is, it's going to change things. Get comfortable with it. Do research. I hope that this webinar helped. I hope our two-sheeter guide helped. We really want to be empathetic to the change. We know that this is a tough time for folks, and hopefully this is a educational piece that you hear directly from us at Facebook and Instagram, because there are a lot of folks talking about this. And again, we as the platform, we want to make sure you hear from us. And then again, take advice from others, look to what others are doing. But hopefully this was a helpful tip, 30 minutes of your time today.
Scott, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I know that you and I could go on for probably 5 to 7 hours.
Hours. Yes.
And that'll be for another time when we actually get to see each other in person again. So
We will. We
thank
will.
you.
Yeah, and I just want to say one last thing, Travis. I want to thank you for your leadership in the industry. You've always been a trusted friend and consultant when we talk about these things. I think for the audience to know, I don't have a real estate background. Our team is 3 to 4 years old. We've learned a lot from being at events and hearing from people, and you're one of them. And your leadership in the space is greatly appreciated. And those 5 and 7 hour conversations allowed us, to do things like this. So, for the folks who know you and value, and I know that so many do, thank you for what you're doing. This is a tough time for a lot of people. From our team to everyone who's watching this, we understand that, and we hope and pray everybody is safe and sound and well, and that, we will get through this. And hopefully this is a part of, it's a small piece to a larger puzzle that hopefully we've delivered today. So thank you. And thanks to the people who follow you.
Scott, thank you. Always a pleasure. And we'll let everyone, there's going to be links and everything and PDFs attached to this. So we'll get this out to everyone.
Awesome. Be well, everyone. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, Scott. Bye-bye.